Wow. That was very, very touching, very touching. And, you know, Rach and I had a conversation a few years back, and in that conversation she mentioned to me that she wasn't an Indigenous leader, that she was a supporter of Indigenous leaders. Rach, you are an Indigenous leader. And the way in which you spoke talks truth to who we are as Indigenous people. And a simple document of the Uluru Statement and what that document was asking for of our fellow Australians. And I think in that speech, Rachel clearly nailed the message and what it is we're seeking. I'd now like to call up Dr. Shireen Morris and thank all the signatories.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Rachel, for those extraordinarily inspiring words. Firstly, and thank you everyone for being here. It's amazing to see all your smiling faces this morning. I'm extremely pleased and proud that the inaugural event of the Radical Centre Reform Lab at Macquarie University is hosting this incredible celebration of the joint resolution by the peak religious organisations of Australia, calling, as Rachel said, for bipartisan action on a First Nations voice referendum. And especially to the law school, I haven't been there long, so I thank Macquarie University for supporting me to establish the Reform Lab, and I join with Sean in thanking Henry and Marcia Pinskia deeply for their support. I also thank Noel Pearson and Cape York Institute for their partnership with me in this work for over a decade now, as well as Damien Freeman and Uphold and Recognise for his collaboration over the last 8 years. Just one thing about the Radical Centre. It's about coming together across political, cultural and ideological divides, and that's what today's about. Today we've seen an unprecedented show of unity and solidarity across differences of belief, culture and tradition in support of a First Nations voice referendum. And what a fitting location, with ancient rock walls looking down on cutting-edge contemporary art, and with Eric Avery's music echoing against the rock face, an artful fusion of traditional and Western, ancient and new. So for me, as an Indian Australian contributor to this cause, today is also an expression of what Noel Pearson calls the three parts of Australia's national story. There is the ancient Indigenous heritage, which is written in the landscape and which echoed through Eric's song. There is our inherited British institutions, the democracy, the rule of law, which makes Australia such a great country. And of course, there is our rich multicultural achievement, which is on such vivid, amazing display here today. The Radical Centre arises through the melding of opposites. It's about the unique balance and synergy you can create when you get that mix right between old and new, conservative and progressive, left and right. And a constitutionally guaranteed voice, properly understood, is a Radical Centre reform. It reconciles Indigenous aspirations for empowering, substantive, a voice in their own affairs with conservative instincts to uphold the Constitution. So I'm proud that the Radical Centre Reform Lab has helped facilitate this today, and I'm inspired by this growing community consensus that we can see.